spoken about generative AI powering the next generation of marketing. Now, this session will focus on the elements of generative AI that marketers can leverage to drive productivity, efficiency, as well as that competitive advantage. This session will also aim as to how to make generative AI real and what challenges need to be addressed. Well, with that being said, let's welcome our eminent panelists on stage. First up, starting with our moderator, Dr. Milind Desai, Associate Director, Strategy and Consulting, Accenture in India. Thank you, Dr. Desai. And joining us are our eminent panelists, starting with Kunal Aman, Director and Head Marketing and Communications India, Middle East, Turkey and Africa SAS. Thank you so much for joining us. Pooja Modi, Vice President, Geo Business Haptic. Let's give Pooja a warm round of applause. And Vipul Kedia, Chief Data and Platforms Officer of Affle. Well, with that, we'd like to leave in the able hands of Dr. Desai to take forward the curation. Can we get the volume?
Hello? Yeah. I don't think so I need a mic with so many number of people in the room today. But yeah, good evening, everybody. I think you have been discussing AI, GenAI, and when we entered, there was this whole conversation about what is this animal called GenAI in the room, it's not a WhatsApp moment, so on and so forth. What we thought, I think, we would do with you is basically talk about how GenAI is real, right? In the sense that switch ourselves back to 1996, the advent of internet. It took us some while, switch ourselves back to WhatsApp. Again, it took us some while. Generative AI is not going to take that long. It is real. How does one make it real in the whole space of marketing specifically? And then we switch over to challenges, and a very pertinent question that we wanted to debate amongst ourselves was, is it going to replace some of us in the room? Is it going to augment some of our capabilities? Is it going to upskill some of us as marketeers? So yeah, I mean, those were the things that we had in mind. We'll start off maybe with this group to talk about how GenAI is real, right? And maybe, Vipul, if you just open up for us, it'll be great.
Sure. So I think talking from the perspective of a marketer, and that's what we do, basically work with a lot of marketers across the board, across industries to drive different objectives that they have. I think GenAI is today playing a role at every stage of the marketing funnel. So right from awareness to consideration to finally, purchase or transaction. And it is happening in different ways. So starting at the top of the funnel, when you talk about, what creatives are working, generating creatives for that manner, doing rapid A/B testing, etc., to figure out exactly where to spend, how much money on what placements, what creatives, etc., going down to what users to target at what point in their journey. Like the previous panel was making a point that it is important that when the user is about to make a purchase, that is the time that he or she should recall you. And I think, again, playing that predictive role in a journey, that when is it that the intent signals are received for a transaction to happen, or for any sort of interest from the user, going down to finally the lowest level of the funnel, where what products to show to what users at what point in time, in what environments, what creative formats, etc. So all of those decisions at different stages are being driven by GenAI, and I think that is the power of GenAI, and that is what makes it real.
Yeah, on the haptic end, Haptic started off as a conversational AI company. So definitely there's Gen AI infused in that journey, right? Be it we have a marketing automation tool that brands use to reach out to their customers via WhatsApp. So there's Gen AI infused already in that product, be it customer segmentation, whom to target, right? What is the outcome you're looking at? Are you looking to acquire new customers? Are you looking to engage with your existing customers? Are you looking to improve the experience by collecting feedback, etc.? and that's when recommendations are made, including what content, and then the analytics linked to those, and intelligence and insights around that. But even outside of the conversational AI space, I think in the last year we have evolved to working with CXOs on actually where they would want to use GenAI for their key business goals as well as challenges in some cases. So, a very common conversation that we had in the haptic leadership side from a GTM perspective is, do we want to go to market with specific products, right? Like a CMO would typically be looking for, a CMO in a specific industry vertical would look for a type of product, whereas chief experience officer would look for something else. But I think where the market is right now when it comes to Gen AI is that all leaders are enthusiastic about figuring out how to use Gen AI, but they don't know the how, which is where, at least at Haptic, the approach we have taken is to use a very consulting first approach where we go work with CXOs, including on the marketing side, CMOs, to figure out what are their key outcomes that they want to drive, or maybe key challenges that are critical enough to their business to put Gen AI to it, right? Because the fact is you don't need Gen AI for every single problem statement or goal. So identifying the right outcomes and challenges where Gen AI makes sense is what we've been doing in a very consultative, first principles, discussion-based way. And after that is when we actually come up with a very custom solution for them versus an out-of-the-box type of solution. And just to your point, to make it real, a few examples, of course, on the marketing side, segmentation, content, etc. But even outside of that, for instance, for a retail client, we're doing things like inventory planning. So, what kind of campaigns do you want to put out? What kind of products are more likely to sell in a particular season? What are the kind of keywords, etc., that you want to include in those campaigns is an example of very real projects that we are doing with customers.
Yeah, just for context, I represent SaaS. We've been in the business of analytics, data management, and now AI since a very long time. So 1976 is when our organization started. So we've seen the entire journey, from statistics to analytics, and now we are talking about AI and now generative AI as well, right? I've been quite fortunate to have seen a number of fantastic implementations in this space, especially in India, firsthand. And I'll just take one of those, in terms of the insight generation, right? We talked a lot about content creation and all that as well, which is super important. We've been in the business of delivering insights. So in terms of insight generation, again, this is with a telecom customer. We had more than 100 million subscribers with that particular customer at that point in time. So you can imagine the amount of, when you're talking about marketing, it's really large scale marketing that's really happening out there. But having said that, how can you make it smarter, right? How do you make it more personalized was the real challenge. And at that point in time, we are talking about, they had around segments. They did the segmentation, targeting, positioning, etc. But the segmentation was so broad that we could possibly put 150 odd segments, right? And then the testing parts, the A/B testing, testing of messages or marketing campaigns was also very, very limited. When we put analytics and AI into the mix, we suddenly developed more than 50,000 such micro segments of people who are, really lookalikes, right? And then that meant that you could hyper personalize a particular campaign very specifically to that small bucket, okay, of customers. That kind of really gives marketing, the entire marketing campaign, instead of frittering away their marketing spend, suddenly the uplift that they were seeing in their marketing was huge, right? And this, by the way, cannot be done manually, cannot be done through any of the traditional methods. We need that AI-powered platforms to really operate at that scale of information, that scale of subscriber base, right? So insight generation and personalization. And now when we're trying to imbibe Gen AI, and that's when it becomes even more interesting, because now what we are trying to do is essentially bringing the whole content piece into the mix, right? So as we all know, now Gen AI can really develop all sorts of fantastic visuals, very personalized copies, and all of that. When we kind of layer it up with the sort of segmentation and insights that we now have, it's just the next level, right? So that's where I think that's a one example, and we have many. But the point is that it's getting to a point of making it very, very real. We are seeing not just implementations that are real, but also results that are significantly better than what we used to see earlier.
No, absolutely. And in fact, the points that each one of you made, right? Specifically, when you talk about making GenAI real, what I am seeing, and of course, I belong to Accenture. It is, for guys who don't know, one of the largest marketing agency in the world, Accenture Song, right? What we do for our clients is exactly what has been spoken about. But we all spoke about areas that are seen by consumers, people like you and me. But at the back end, there is a whole bit of content creation, content curation, content tagging in something which is beautiful called as DAM, which is your digital asset manager, right? How do you put all of that? Is definitely generative AI. And this is where I'm going to quickly switch over to basically putting ourselves into a shoes of a CMO in our client organizations, right? If there is a GCPL or if there is a Dabur CMO, how does he or she decide and go about, okay, I have to start generative AI. What do I do? Right? Let's talk about those and shed some light on that as well, our perspectives, right?
So I think first and foremost, as a CMO or any exec in the organization for that matter, it is important to decide the end objectives that we want to derive from GenAI, because that is what is going to define the strategy. Because it is not that every problem suddenly is being solved by GenAI and you are applying it everywhere. So whether it is from a CMO's perspective, starting from CRM or from media buying or your communication design, etc. Those are some of the areas which need to be decided. Then on basis of that, the decision which needs to be made is how do you go about it? Because some capabilities you might want to build in-house. Some capabilities you would want to work with platforms or solution providers who have those capabilities ready and who are experts in those fields. And then some of them you would just push for, a few months down the line or whatever. So like, for example, Apple has multiple platforms which work primarily on delivering marketing outcomes for advertisers at every stage of the funnel. Now, one of the things that we do is to help with keyword discovery. So when we are talking about Apple Search Ads as a platform where we have our own platform built on top of it, there is a fully powered keyword generation solution which works not just in English and Hindi, but in all vernacular languages in India and overseas markets, where we are helping with keyword discovery on basis of the marketing objectives to decide what keywords should be used, what number of keywords should be used, what should be the SOV on each of the keywords, what should be the bids, and bids also at different points in time. I mean, you might want to bid higher on a keyword during IPL versus during some other event and so on. So creating that entire strategy and plugging it in, and from a CMO's perspective, deciding what aspects does the CMO sees the maximum efficiency and their inefficiency and therefore the scope of improvement is important. And then on basis of that, the next steps of the strategy will be decided.
Great.
Yeah.
Any thoughts, yeah? Pooja?
Yeah, so from my perspective, just for context, as I was saying earlier, I think haptic, as people know, the avatar of haptic so far has always been a conversational AI company. You probably have heard of us a lot in the chatbot space. But in the last year, we've actually evolved also to work with our clients on their largest problem statements using Gen AI, even if it is outside of the conversational AI space. And those are the projects that I had. So to that point, be it CMO or any other CXO that we work with, at least typically what we have seen as the number one first step would be to just understand what their key KRAs are, Sometimes even start with the biggest pain points. Actually, there's a lot of good that comes out of that conversation in terms of identifying what is the problem statement. The next that we have seen is typically the solutions that we provide are not necessarily a standalone GenAI solution or product. It will always end up being a module that fits into an existing system and an existing process that they're already doing, right? So be it, we are working, as I mentioned, with a retailer on inventory planning, or with another e-commerce company on improving the quality of their catalog. So a lot of these solutions end up being are models integrated into existing systems they use. Hence, the solution is usually not just an AI model. There will always be certain pre-processing of the data, then the model post-processing APIs we provide which integrate, right? So you will see that these are solutions that have some AI, but there'll be typical coding and APIs, your system integrations, etc., that also do happen. And I think having that very real view of an AI solution is not just your, fancy models, but also very real engineering work that goes in, and keeping that in mind when you're thinking of implementing AI. Thirdly, the last and most important piece there that I think, people sometimes misses what is, GenAI at the end of the day, right? It's not just, GPT, or those are the most popular names that you hear of, but there are actually today a lot of open source models, etc., that brands can leverage, which are not as popular, that people don't know about. And I think that's where, to his point, the most important part of a decision for the CMO actually comes down to working either with internally, if you have those resources, or working with people who've been in the space, who know that enough, right? Like, for example, we have built certain solutions for our customers using I won't name, but like specific APIs, and then realize that, okay, maybe this is turning out to be very expensive because the per query cost is high or the infrastructure cost is high. So then we're doing other research to figure out, can the same thing be done using open source models? Or we have certain routing logic built on top of the models to figure out only for specific queries we use OpenAI, and maybe for different queries we use open source models depending on the accuracy and the nature of the query. So there's a lot of expertise there that gets built over time. And I think those are the decisions that comes down to a CMO when they're deciding whom to play with. And the market is still super early in that sense, where even players like us are experimenting. We have smaller teams that are doing things in a very hustle way. Probably another 4 to 5 years, players will emerge who are experts in marketing, for GenAI for marketing or GenAI for specific industries. But today it's super early. So I think just knowing the right players and working with people who have the right experience would be a good bet for now.
You want to add, Kunal?
Yeah, so in my observations and in my conversations with marketing leaders and their teams, it's very clear that it's right now, it's despite all the hype that we are seeing in the market, it's very, very early. Okay, so we see a lot of marketers and teams really in that experimentation stage, and that's actually stage 2. Stage 1 is really starting to establish a clear ownership. Who owns this thing, right? So we are talking about marketers here, but I've seen organizations who are really debating whether it should be IT, whether it should be a chief data officer, should be the chief digital officer, should it be the marketing officer, right? So there's a very healthy, at the same time, a strong debate that's going on as to who owns that piece, right? And what is the real impact of that? Which business should, what part of the business should it really start impacting? So we are actually at that level, right? Though despite there is so much of media hype around AI and Gen AI, we are right now at that stage. So what that means is that the more successful organizations that I have seen personally are the ones who have been successful in doing something else, which is, for example, analytics, right? And they've seen success there. That gives the confidence to the board, to the leadership to invest in the next stage, which could be AI, okay? And that's where they made progress, right? So they've got these bunch of learnings from doing something else, which they are kind of bringing in. And then there is, of course, a clear sense of ownership, clear commitment to the whole project. There is an executive sponsor in place. The more mature ones are actually starting to form AI councils, where they're putting pieces together, where they're saying, oh, not just executive leaders, but we need cross-domain knowledge. Then the next step being identifying the right use cases after a fair amount of debate as to where should we put our money, where should we put our resources, right? So those are the organizations who are making progress in the Gen AI space, rather than just throwing everything at Gen AI and seeing what sticks. So that's been my observation.
So, superb. I'll just add maybe a couple of observations that I have also seen, right? Yes, ownership, KRAs, all relevant. Where we are seeing, at least in the Indian space, and I also work with a lot of retailers, life science companies, and so on and so forth. The first question that, and in fact, there is a very great life science company in the country who has said, the CMO and the CDO came together and they said, look, GenAI to karna hai, right? Ab wo kya karna hai, we don't know. But we want to start off with in-house. We want to set up a platform for generative AI. So they tied up with, the likes of us, they tied up with the likes of the Azures of the world. We set up their platform. So there is on one extreme, companies who are saying, GenAI karna hai, we need a platform. On the other extreme, this whole council part that you brought out, Kunal, right? There is a global pharma company who has gone ahead multiple steps and said, let me set up a GenAI council. This council is not only data scientists and data engineers and prompt engineers of the variety. They also have a legal person on their council who will say, content, if you are creating, what about the copyright of that? What about the medico-legal approvals for that? Because any content that you create in the pharma world, it has to pass through that. So there are extremes that we are seeing. GenAI is here, everybody accepts it. It's a fantastic boardroom conversations. People like me, who is a strategy consultant, would love to enter a CEO room with a GenAI conversation and sell maybe something else, right? But that has been a fantastic conversation. At the same time, what we are also hearing, and few friends of mine who are also there in the marketing side of the story, right? Is it going to take away what I do? Is it going to replace me, right? Tomorrow, if you say content to apne aap DALL-E and Midjourney bana deta hai, so what will I do, right? So this whole debate about jobs being taken away by generative AI, we thought we should kill that also for this conversation, because 6 years ago, people thought AI is going to kill jobs. 20 years ago, people thought internet is going to kill jobs, right? It has only added jobs, and if human mind is such that we can upskill. We evolved from chimpanzees, right? So we have upskilled ourselves many layers more. GenAI can also do that. So why not let us, for the last 8 minutes or so, debate on this pertinent topic of jobs and relevance of marketeers in the space of GenAI. Pooja, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. So I will refer to something a professor at Harvard Business School had told me about GenAI a couple months ago. It was that having GenAI to your disposal is like having a very smart intern, but you still have to know what to instruct it to get the best out of it, A. B, can probably do one thing really well, and you will see this if you play around with GenAI. But if you try to tell it too many things to do in the same instruction or the same prompt, it will go haywire. C, it does hallucinate. So like an intern at the end of the day, no matter how good they have less experience, so there will be a point where maybe they're not fully reliable. And so the larger point there is that, of course, GenAI is great and these models are only getting better with time and they will continue to. But they are at the end of the day not magic, and it does take fairly good level of understanding, trial, error, and even knowledge of how they work to make it work for you. So there is a whole another area of expertise called prompt engineering, which is coming up. You see a lot of online courses, etc., coming in, which teach you, and it is a never-ending pit in that sense. You can keep getting better at it. So it's not magic. It's not just going to come in one day and replace people. There is certain skill involved there. So that's the first thing I would say to your point. The second thing there is that like every revolution that we have seen over centuries, even as you said, I don't think jobs will just go away. There will be specific jobs that do, and I've seen that in my own team as we have used GenAI in our internal operations. There have been roles that, as a fact, even as of today, have become redundant. For example, in the chatbot space, we used to have this role called a conversational designer whose job was to design the journey, and a big part of that was copywriting. As a fact, that's gone away today. But have the designers left the company? No, they have found other jobs for themselves. For example, we were figuring out how to do vernacular languages at scale. Okay, and that's a problem statement we gave our conversational designer, and they have now started becoming the vernacular person in the company, where their full-time job is to figure out how to use GenAI to make vernacular language chatbots more seamless. So what I'm trying to say is jobs will evolve, but GenAI is not just going to come in and replace. There is a certain level of skill required, and like all other jobs, I think if you are a junior person in the company worried about your job getting replaced, I think the number one thing you should go back to is upskilling yourself, learning the new technology. And if you're a leader looking to hire, I think that's again something that in today's world is the number one thing. If you solve for, I think you should be good.
Yeah, I think totally agree. You have summed it up pretty well, that it's all about upskilling, and new roles will get created. So I don't think the human capital is going away anywhere. And that is with every revolution, with every change in technology, change in platforms, I think that is how the world moves. So this is not new.
Absolutely. Kunal, any thoughts?
This question kind of takes me back to 2019 when I was reading this report on that was curated by an organization for economic cooperation and development, OECD, right? And they were talking about jobs in the future. One of the things that they very clearly made a very bold forecast on was the fact that 14%, in 15 years, 14% of all the jobs today will completely be automated. That means it disappears. Another 32% will be radically transformed. Okay, that put together itself is around 46%. Right? That was quite a sobering thought for me, because that meant, and the number was around 1 billion, right? So it's 1 billion jobs that are going to get impacted. So whether we like it or not, AI is here, right? Question is, what are we going to do about it as marketeers? I was, again, going through another report which was talking about how upskilling is, again, becoming very important. And that's, again, something that my fellow panelists have also brought in. The issue is upskilling is all right today. And I think a lot of organizations are really investing in that because they realize that, and tech more than anyone else, but a lot of organizations are realizing that we are not ready with the sort of talent that we need to move into the future, right? So that is happening. But in my own personal opinion, I think upskilling is not enough, okay? Jobs of the future might require complete reskilling, okay? I'm wearing a smartwatch today, and by the way, I'm an engineer. I was an engineer. I was to practice engineering for a fair amount of years before I became a marketer. And I've got friends who graduated with me, and we didn't. That time, smartwatches weren't even in our imagination. And these guys today, my friends, are smartwatch engineers. Some of them design, the code behind it. It wasn't even a real thing, right? So, point is that I think humans and marketers are definitely not going to be replaced by AI, but my certain belief is that marketers with AI will replace those without AI. Okay, so what can we do as marketers is definitely invest ourselves in building the skill set, keeping just even if your organization does not have the current tools or platforms and has not started the journey yet, that's all right. There's nothing wrong in keeping abreast with what's happening out there in the market, right? There are plenty of free tools for us to use, plenty of free trials as well, which you can avail of. A lot of these open source tools that are available on AI are free to use. Okay, nothing wrong in dabbling it at our personal capacities, right? I do it all the time, right? The point is that gives us a certain amount of confidence, that gives us that much more ability and knowledge to talk, in a much more educated manner about these things and have a perspective on it, right? And that's where your journey starts, right? And at some point, I'm sure our journeys will all evolve into something that is much more real, and we all get hands-on. And one of the most important things, in my opinion, is that jobs of the future are going to belong to people who are ready to learn, unlearn, and then relearn, right? That's one of the most important takeaways. That's something that I personally believe. I try to share with my team as well, and I think that's the way to kind of really look at the landscape of jobs today.
I just want to add to that, just to really emphasize what he is saying, because in Haptic, it being an AI company, we kind of brought that culture in pretty early on, starting with getting AI just to improve our operations, and then of course now also taking it to our clients in a B2B context. And I have actually seen variety of roles in our company across levels as well as functions adapt to it in different ways, right? It could literally right from CEO of our company to a finance intern to a head of marketing to a marketing associate to a designer to a content writer, an engineer, a product manager, right? um, there is nothing about your role that is suited or not to AI. Actually, it really just come down to your individual curiosity of playing around and tinkering around and figuring. As I said, even these models, they're not consistent, right? I can promise you, if you go ask Gen AI something today and use the same prompt tomorrow, it will give you different answer on both days. And to the extent where you have a prompt, it gives you a great answer. You change one word and the whole context can shift. So I think I would just say to that point, if you're someone that's just nervous and has this question in your mind, it really just comes down to going and playing around and trying things, because it's so early on that you probably are still ahead of the game. If you're just openly playing around, trying different things, trying to break it, etc., you're still way ahead of most people in your domain, and there's no right or wrong designation for you to be eligible to playing around with GPT, because I've met a lot of people who feel, oh, it's the engineer who can go figure that out, or someone more senior. There is no such thing. So I think that's what I would say, just having that adaptability, that curiosity, and that appetite to learn is probably the only thing you need to be able to survive this. And it's actually fun, not something that over time, as you play with it, you'll realize that you still are smarter than the AI at the end of the day, because you need to know how to make it work for you. At the end of the day, it's a tool that works for you, not something that's going to come and outsmart you. I think if you start seeing it like that, you'll actually figure a way to make it work for you and then become a valuable asset to your organization.
No, well said. I see the red timer on the screen anyway, so I'll just summarize it here with only two thoughts. One is, yes, we started off saying generative AI is real. What it has definitely done is it has democratized AI for all of you. I mean, Pooja rightly said, go and try out. Go to a Mid-Journey, go to a DALL-E, type out something, generate images, do your chat. And secondly, why should you learn? Are you in the right age to learn? There is no right age. I have an 11-year-old daughter who comes and tells me, Papa, can I write my essay on a chat GPT? And then she gets a left, right, and center from me, right? So that's the thing today. So generative AI is real, maybe not for our generation, maybe for the next generation, but yes, it is real. And most importantly, it's not going to take away anything from anybody as long as we are upskilling. It is an augmentation. Look at Microsoft. Microsoft does not call generative AI autopilot, it calls co-pilot. So it's going to be with you. It's a co-worker. This Harvard example that Pooja mentioned. So on that note, I think it's brilliant. I learned a lot. Again, I presume all of you, including the panelists, enjoyed this. Go back home. Figure out how generative AI can really help you. If not, all 4 of us belong to consulting organizations. We are here to help you. Right? Thank you so much.
Thank you.